The universe was vast. For millennia, it had been ruled by the Galactic Council, a group of alien species with advanced technology and unmatched power. They controlled everything: planets, resources, and even the lives of those who dared to challenge their authority. Humanity, a relatively young species, had been enslaved, treated as inferior and insignificant in the eyes of the Council. Earth had become a distant outpost, exploited for its resources and used as a mere tool in the galactic machine. For generations, humans lived under the heavy boot of the Council's rule. Their cities were walled off, and their voices were silenced. But in the shadows, something had been growing. An underground movement, a rebellion, had quietly spread across the Earth, building strength in secret, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment was now. Commander John Malik stood in the war room, staring out the large glass windows that overlooked the sprawling human settlement on the surface of Earth. The sky was darkened by the looming ships of the Council, massive and intimidating. But today, for the first time in decades, the human resistance had a glimmer of hope. Malik had once been a high-ranking officer in the human military. Now he was the leader of the rebellion. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was the symbol of humanity's fight for freedom. As he looked at the city, he could see the tension in the air. It was palpable, like the calm before a storm. The Galactic Council had made a mistake, a big one. They had underestimated humanity. 3 days earlier, the Council had sent a message, demanding Earth's complete surrender. The human race was to cease all resistance, submit fully to the will of the Galactic Council, and dismantle all forms of rebellion. The message had been clear: Earth would be destroyed if they refused. But instead of cowering in fear, Earth had done something unexpected. The rebellion, led by Commander Malik, had launched a surprise counterattack, using hidden weapons from ancient human technology. It was a direct challenge to the Council. And it had worked. For the first time in decades, the Council's ships were on the defensive. The war room was filled with the leaders of the human resistance: scientists, engineers, strategists, and military commanders. Malik looked at each of them, his face grim but determined. They knew what was at stake. The Council had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now it was their turn to feel the sting of that mistake. "We've taken out their communications relay," General Torres said, breaking the silence. "We've crippled their ability to coordinate. The Council is in disarray, and they don't know what hit them." Malik nodded. "Good. We need to keep them off balance. But we can't stop here. The Council is too powerful. They'll send reinforcements. We need to hit them where it hurts." The room went quiet as everyone absorbed the weight of his words. They all knew that the real battle had just begun. The Council would not give up easily, but neither would they. Malik turned to the holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a map of the galaxy, with Earth at its center. The Council's ships were scattered across the map, most of them concentrated near key human cities and military installations. But there was one location that caught his attention. A large fleet of ships, far beyond the reach of Earth, was moving toward a forgotten part of the galaxy, toward an ancient alien weapon hidden on a dead planet. "This is it," Malik said, pointing at the map. "We have to secure this weapon before the Council does. It's humanity's only chance to win this war." The weapon had been lost to history, an ancient artifact from a time before the Council even existed. Legends spoke of its power, its ability to annihilate entire fleets. No one knew for sure what it could do, but Malik wasn't about to take chances. If the Council got to it first, humanity's chances of survival would be slim. "We leave tonight," Malik ordered. "Prepare your teams. We're going to find that weapon, and we're going to take it for ourselves." As the team began to prepare for their mission, Malik's thoughts drifted. The Council had made many mistakes in their treatment of humanity, but this was the most significant. They had thought humanity was weak. They had thought humanity would never rise up. They were wrong. And now, the tide was turning. The rebellion had already proven that the Council could be defeated. But it wasn't enough to just fight back. Humanity had to become more than just a resistance. They had to become rulers. And the ancient weapon was their key to unlocking that power. Malik stood, staring at the map. The human resistance was no longer a small, scattered group. They had the momentum now. And with the Council's fatal mistake, humanity's reign over the stars was about to begin. But as Malik prepared to embark on the mission, a warning flashed on the holographic screen. "Fleet incoming," the system alerted. The Galactic Council wasn't going to let humanity escape without a fight. The real war was just beginning. Malik's heart raced as he observed the incoming alert. His fingers hovered over the map, tracing the path of the approaching Council fleet. This wasn't just any fleet. It was one of their most formidable. If the Council had already mobilized this kind of force, they were preparing for a full-scale retaliation. Humanity's victory so far was a small victory, but it had ignited the fire of their enemies. The real fight was about to begin. The war room hummed with activity as the Resistance's commanders quickly gathered. General Torres stepped forward, her face tense. "Sir, we need to move fast. If they're sending their best ships, we won't have much time before they arrive." Malik nodded grimly. He could feel the weight of the decision resting heavily on his shoulders. This was no longer just about survival. Humanity had already proven they could fight back. But now, they had a chance to go on the offensive and take the fight directly to the heart of the Galactic Council. They needed that weapon, the one hidden on a desolate planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. Without it, humanity's resistance would remain fragile, dependent on fleeting victories. With it, they would have the power to push the Council back for good. He addressed his team, his voice steady, yet laced with urgency. "We don't have the luxury of waiting. We need to move. Prepare the fleet for launch. Now." Torres didn't hesitate. Within seconds, her team was scrambling to execute orders. The countdown had begun, but the threat of the incoming fleet loomed like a dark cloud overhead. Malik turned to his closest advisors. They had been with him since the beginning, through the darkest hours of humanity's struggle. "The weapon is our only chance. If the Council gets there first, they'll use it against us. We'll never survive." "We'll get it, Commander," one of the advisors assured him, but Malik could hear the doubt in his voice. They all knew the odds were against them. The Council's forces outnumbered humanity's by far, and even with their ancient weapon, they didn't know what they were walking into. But they had no choice. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the war room as the technicians quickly set up a live feed of the fleet's progress. The holographic map displayed the approaching Council ships, their movements precise and calculated. A soft beep broke the silence, indicating the fleet was now less than 2 hours away from entering Earth's atmosphere. If they didn't leave soon, they would be trapped, unable to escape the Council's grasp. Malik glanced at the crew, seeing the nervous energy in their eyes. They were about to take on a battle that would decide the fate of humanity. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, something inside him told him that this was their moment. They had already defied the Council's expectations, and they weren't going to stop now. With one last look at the screen, he turned to Torres. "Initiate the jump sequence. All ships, prepare for warp speed. We're going after that weapon, no matter what." The Resistance's fleet, though small compared to the Council's, had the element of surprise on their side. They weren't bound by the rigid structure of the Council's military. They fought like a wildfire, unpredictable and relentless. As the ships prepared to depart, Malik's mind raced. The Council had made one fatal mistake after another, but this would be the ultimate test. Humanity had been underestimated. The galaxy had thought that they would bend under the weight of galactic control. But they were wrong. The hum of the engines began to rise as the Resistance's ships powered up. Malik felt the familiar jolt as the ships engaged the warp engines. Earth, the world that had once been enslaved, slowly shrank from view. Behind them, the Council's ships loomed, closer now, their weapons powered and ready. As the ships zipped through space, Malik allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He had once been a soldier, a man who fought for his country. But now, he was fighting for something far greater. He wasn't just leading a rebellion anymore. He was leading humanity's resurgence. The fight for freedom wasn't just about Earth. It was about proving that no matter how far the galaxies stretch, humanity would always find a way to survive. They would carve their place among the stars. The warp drive disengaged with a sudden lurch, and Malik's eyes locked onto the dark, barren planet on the holographic map. This was it, the ancient weapon that could turn the tide of the war, the key to humanity's future. But something felt off. The planet was uninhabited, desolate, too quiet. They had expected this, of course, but there was a sense of foreboding in the air. He shook off the feeling. There was no time for hesitation. His crew was ready. The weapon was within their reach. And then, a new alert flashed across the map. Multiple energy signatures, rapidly approaching from the planet's surface. Something was waiting for them. The energy signatures on the map blinked ominously as Malik's fingers hovered over the console, his mind racing. What was that? He had expected something, maybe a hidden defense system, perhaps ancient ruins with dormant technology. But this was something different. The signatures were not from the usual automated weapons or dormant systems he had read about. No, these were active, alive even. It wasn't just the weapon they were here for anymore. It was something else. "Commander," General Torres's voice was sharp over the comms. "We've got incoming. Multiple ships coming from the surface. We didn't sign up for this." Malik's mind raced as he looked at the tactical map. The energy signatures had shifted. Now, they were breaking through the planet's dense atmosphere at an alarming speed. This wasn't a simple defense force. It was an organized attack. He had barely just launched the mission, and already they were on the brink of something far worse than they had imagined. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "Divert all ships to defensive formation. Don't let them get close. We can't afford to lose control now." The crew scrambled, pulling up defensive grids and preparing weapons. The planet had been a mystery, but now it felt like a trap. Everything about this felt wrong. They were expecting the weapon, but now they had enemies, maybe even a new faction altogether, on their tails. "Activate shields," Torres ordered, her voice strained. "Prepare for battle." As Malik's ship entered orbit and prepared to land on the desolate planet's surface, the ships from the surface began to appear on their radar in clusters. The fleet of attacking ships was massive, far larger than what they had anticipated. From the looks of it, they had underestimated whatever was hiding on that forsaken rock. "Are they with the Council?" Malik asked, his voice tight. "We can't afford another faction right now." Torres didn't answer immediately, her face grim. "Unknown. We've never seen ships like these before. They're not ours, and they don't appear to belong to the Council either." The feeling of uncertainty gnawed at Malik. The Council had already made mistakes, tons of them. But this was new. They had unknowingly walked into a hornet's nest, and he could sense it. There was something bigger going on here, something deeper than a mere weapon that could turn the tide of battle. What was this force, and why were they attacking? Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Malik stumbled forward, gripping the nearest console to steady himself. Red lights flashed across the walls of the bridge. Shields were being hit, hard. They were in a full-scale assault now. "Brace for impact," Torres shouted as the comms crackled with a warning. Malik's breath caught in his throat as explosions rang out across the hull. The ship shuddered violently as an energy blast rocked their shields. For a moment, everything felt suspended in time, a fragile lull before chaos. He stared at the tactical readout, trying to piece together the puzzle. They had been expecting resistance, sure, but not this. Not like this. His mind raced, and instinct took over. They couldn't afford to hesitate, not when they were so close. "Hold steady, everyone. We need that weapon. No matter what happens here, we can't turn back. We've come too far," he barked, rallying the crew. He watched as Torres moved quickly to her post, her hands flying over the controls. The atmosphere on the bridge was thick with tension. This wasn't just about the weapon anymore. It wasn't even just about survival. They were on the cusp of something far more dangerous, and possibly more rewarding, than they had ever dreamed. Humanity had come a long way, but the path to victory had never been more uncertain. The ship rocked again as another blast rattled them. The shields were beginning to fail, their power reserves running dangerously low. But still, they moved forward. They would land on the surface, find the weapon, and discover whatever secrets lay hidden. Nothing would stop them. Through the viewports of the ship, Malik caught a glimpse of the planet's barren surface, a gray, lifeless landscape. Yet, beneath that, something else pulsed. A hidden energy. The ground trembled slightly as their ship descended. Whatever was waiting down there, it wasn't just ancient technology. It was a force far more powerful, far more dangerous than they could have imagined. "We're nearing the surface," Torres announced, her voice tense but steady. Malik tightened his grip on the armrest, ready for the unknown. He couldn't let fear dictate the course of this mission. Whatever secrets this planet held, they had to be uncovered. Humanity's future depended on it. As the ship descended lower, the energy from the surface flared brighter. Malik's heart pounded as he realized they were not just uncovering a weapon. They were about to unlock something far darker. The truth behind the Galactic Council's downfall and humanity's future was just below the surface. "Brace for landing," he ordered, as the ship made its final descent. The ground loomed closer, and with it, a new chapter in the galaxy's history was about to unfold, one that would either spell the end of humanity's struggle or bring them to an entirely new war, one they weren't prepared for. The ship touched down with a heavy thud, and the crew immediately began preparing for disembarkation. The next few moments would decide everything. The atmosphere inside the ship grew tense as Malik's team prepared for the unknown. The air felt thick with the weight of their impending task, the promise of discovery mixed with the fear of what might await them on the surface. Each of them knew that this mission was unlike anything they had faced before. They had come seeking a weapon, a device said to have the power to tip the balance of the war. But as the ship descended toward the planet's surface, they realized they might have stumbled upon something far more dangerous. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Malik's chest. His hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white, as the vessel shuddered slightly. He glanced over at General Torres, whose face was set with determination but shadowed with uncertainty. Even she, the most experienced of the crew, was showing signs of doubt. Something wasn't right. "Approaching the landing zone," Torres said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. Malik nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. What if this wasn't just about a weapon? What if the Galactic Council had been hiding something more, something that could unravel the entire galaxy? A cold shiver ran down his spine. The stories of forbidden knowledge, powerful artifacts, and ancient secrets had always seemed like nothing more than myth. But the energy readings from the surface, they were too real, too powerful to ignore. The ship's engines roared as they cut through the planet's atmosphere, and the ground below came into sharper focus. A vast, barren expanse stretched out beneath them, dotted with jagged rock formations and ancient ruins that looked like they had been untouched for centuries. The landscape seemed to hum with energy, sending a chill through Malik's bones. What was buried here? "We're almost down," Torres said, breaking Malik from his thoughts. Malik nodded again, his mind racing. He had to stay focused. He had to trust his crew and his instincts. They were here for a reason. They had to find the weapon, whatever it was, and bring it back. But with every passing second, he felt a deeper unease settling into his gut. As the ship touched down, the engines sputtered out, and the crew immediately sprang into action. They secured their gear and prepared for what lay ahead. Malik's boots hit the cold metal floor with a solid thud, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on his shoulders. "Let's move," he ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. Torres led the charge, her boots echoing as she stepped out first, scanning the horizon. The rest of the team followed, weapons ready, their eyes trained on the desolate planet before them. The air was thick with dust, and the eerie silence that hung over the planet seemed to suffocate everything. No birds, no wind, just an unsettling quiet that made the hair on the back of Malik's neck stand on end. They moved forward, cautious but determined. The ruins around them were ancient, stone structures half buried in the sand and dirt, a testament to a civilization long gone. As they moved deeper into the abandoned city, the air grew heavier with the feeling of something watching them, following them. Malik couldn't shake the sensation that they weren't alone. "Stay alert," Torres ordered, her eyes scanning the ruins. Malik's hand rested on the hilt of his blaster as he looked around, every muscle in his body tense. The silence was unbearable now, each step echoing in the empty air. And then suddenly, they reached the center of the ruins, where an enormous structure stood, an ancient temple-like building that rose high above them. The entrance was cracked open, as if waiting for them. "This is it," Malik whispered, almost to himself. Torres nodded, her face tight with concentration. "Let's go. We need to find out what's inside." With that, they entered the building. The air inside was cold and stale, and Malik felt a chill run through him as they moved further into the darkness. There was something here, something that could change everything. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to pulse with power, a strange energy radiating from the walls. Suddenly, a low hum filled the room, like a distant, ancient voice that seemed to echo from all directions. Malik's heart began to race. This wasn't just an old building. It was alive with energy, as if the structure itself was aware of their presence. The air felt charged, and Malik could almost taste the electricity in the atmosphere. "What the hell is that?" one of the crew members whispered, his voice tense with fear. Malik didn't answer. He had a sinking feeling that they were about to uncover something much bigger than they had anticipated. This wasn't just about finding a weapon anymore. This was about understanding the true power of the galaxy. And that power was not something to be trifled with. As they moved deeper into the temple, they reached a massive chamber, its walls lined with strange alien symbols. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, on top of which rested an object, glowing faintly with a strange, otherworldly light. Malik's eyes widened as he approached, his steps slow and cautious. "This is it," he muttered, his voice filled with awe. But just as he reached out to touch it, the ground trembled beneath them. The walls of the chamber seemed to groan, as if they were coming alive. A deep, resonant voice boomed through the air, shaking the very foundations of the room. "Leave now," it commanded. "You do not know what you seek." Malik's blood ran cold. He turned to the others, his expression grim. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. And then, the chamber doors slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. The future of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself, was now in their hands. The stakes had never been higher, and there was no turning back. The chamber trembled again, and Malik's heart skipped a beat. The voice, deep and menacing, echoed off the walls, growing louder and more insistent. "You are fools," it boomed, shaking the very air around them. The light from the pedestal flickered, casting strange, shifting shadows across the room. Malik's crew tensed, weapons raised, eyes darting around, but no one could pinpoint where the voice was coming from. It felt as though the entire structure was alive, its ancient heart pulsing with malevolent energy. "What do you want?" Malik called out, his voice steady despite the chaos building inside him. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. This wasn't just an ancient artifact or a weapon. It was something far more insidious. "Leave," the voice commanded once more, a command laced with an impossible power. "You do not understand the cost of your presence." Malik felt his chest tighten. He glanced at Torres, whose face was pale, her normally unshakable demeanor faltering for the first time. She had seen many things in her career, but this was something new, something beyond. "Not until we know what this is," Malik said, motioning to the glowing pedestal. "We have to understand what we found." The room fell silent. The very walls seemed to listen, waiting, as though the structure itself were weighing Malik's words. The pedestal hummed softly, and then, to their collective shock, it began to glow brighter, sending tendrils of light spiraling outwards, snaking toward the walls. The symbols on the walls, strange, alien characters Malik couldn't comprehend, shifted, rearranged, and started to glow as well. Malik's breath caught in his throat. "It's a beacon," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "It's not just a weapon. It's a call." "What are you talking about?" Torres demanded, her voice sharp, though she, too, seemed to sense the shift in the air. "This is no ordinary relic. It's calling someone, or something," Malik said. "And whatever it is, it's coming." As if in response to his words, the ground beneath their feet vibrated once more. The voice echoed through the room again, but this time, it sounded different, less threatening, more urgent. "Stop," the voice pleaded, now trembling with an emotion Malik hadn't heard before. "Fear, you do not know what you are awakening." But it was too late. A low rumble filled the air, and the walls of the chamber began to shift, the ancient stones grinding against each other with a deafening noise. Malik's crew instinctively backed up, their weapons aimed at the shifting walls. But the floor beneath their feet cracked open, revealing a massive shaft that descended deep into the planet's core. From within the darkness, strange, glowing eyes seemed to peer back at them, and the air grew colder still. Malik could barely comprehend what he was seeing. The stone walls were cracking, breaking apart, and beneath them, an enormous structure, ancient and alien, began to emerge. It was massive, something that seemed both alive and mechanical. Its surface shimmered with energy, glowing bright enough to cast shadows across the room. And then they heard it, the unmistakable sound of something, or someone, moving inside the structure. The crew froze. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know if they were walking into the heart of a weapon, or the lair of something far worse. The voices had fallen silent now, replaced by an oppressive, suffocating silence that seemed to throb through the very air. "We need to leave. Now," Torres said, her voice tight with urgency. But Malik couldn't tear his gaze away from the glowing structure. Something deep within him told him that they had crossed a line. There was no going back now. Whatever was inside that structure, whatever force they had just unleashed, was not something they could easily contain. "Stay focused," Malik ordered, his voice cold with the realization of what they had done. "We're here to learn what this is. We can't leave now." Torres looked at him, her expression conflicted. The rest of the crew, too, shared the same nervous tension. But no one argued. They all knew that this was a pivotal moment. The structure in front of them shuddered, and with a groaning metallic sound, the massive doors slowly began to open. Inside, the light was blinding, shifting from a dull glow to something intense, something alive. From the shadows, Malik could make out forms, strange, otherworldly silhouettes that seemed to be moving. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Malik could see his breath fogging in front of him as they moved forward. He motioned to the crew to advance, his every instinct screaming at him to turn back. But he couldn't. They were too close now. They had awakened something, and whatever it was, they needed to know what it meant for the future of humanity, and for the entire galaxy. Then, as they neared the threshold of the strange, glowing door, a voice, no longer a booming command, but a whisper, reached Malik's ears. "Welcome home, children of Earth." The words were chilling. They carried a weight of ancient knowledge, as if this was a place that had waited for humanity's arrival for millennia. And as Malik stepped into the blinding light, he knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. As Malik stepped into the glowing chamber, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The voice that had whispered to them, "Welcome home, children of Earth," had sent a chill down his spine. But it wasn't just the words, it was the tone. It was as though the entity behind the voice had been waiting for humanity's arrival, as though Earth had always been destined for something more, something far greater than the rest of the galaxy had ever anticipated. The lights surrounding them grew brighter, almost suffocating, and Malik's crew adjusted their visors and shields, their hands twitching over their weapons. The tension was palpable. Every instinct told them to retreat, to abandon this forsaken place before they unleashed something they couldn't control. But they were already too far in. There was no turning back now. The doors behind them slowly shut with a heavy, resonating thud, sealing them inside. They were trapped, unless they could figure out what to do next. The room stretched out before them, a massive, open space, at the center of which was a pedestal, just like the one they had found in the earlier chamber. But this one was different. It wasn't simply a beacon, it was a throne that seemed to pulse with ancient energy, beckoning them forward. "Don't touch it," Torres warned, her voice harsh but quiet, filled with a deep, instinctual fear. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." Malik nodded, though he couldn't tear his eyes away from the throne. The glowing symbols around the room shifted again, their patterns twisting into an unrecognizable language. Then, a deep mechanical hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls, the floor, and even through their bones. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, regal, and undeniably alien. Its features were humanoid but distorted, smooth skin that shimmered like liquid metal, eyes glowing with an eerie light that seemed to see straight through them. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Malik had ever seen. The figure didn't speak, but its presence was enough to send a shock through the crew. "You have come," it said finally, its voice smooth but hauntingly cold. "The time has arrived." The crew's hearts raced, but Malik found his own pulse slowing, his mind working at breakneck speed. He had been prepared for danger, but this was something far more complex. "What is this place?" Malik asked, his voice steady despite the rising tension in the air. "Who are you?" The figure's eyes flashed with an unreadable emotion. It didn't respond immediately. Instead, it raised a hand and pointed to the throne, its gaze locked onto Malik. "This throne," it said slowly, "was never meant for your kind. But now that you are here, the galaxy will bend to your will." The crew exchanged nervous glances. This was the moment that would determine everything. The throne wasn't just a relic. It was a symbol, a claim to something far beyond their understanding. "What do you want from us?" Torres demanded, taking a step forward, her blaster raised but her grip shaky. "If you expect us to bow to you." The figure didn't flinch. "You misunderstand," it said, its voice becoming more intense. "It is not I who requires your obedience. It is you, who must claim what is rightfully yours." Malik's mind raced. What did the alien mean by that? What was rightfully theirs? The figure continued. "The Galactic Council believed that your species would never amount to anything. They abandoned Earth, left it to wither. But they were wrong. The time for your kind to rise has arrived." Malik's stomach twisted. The Council. Earth. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but not in a way he had imagined. Humanity's abandonment, its forced isolation, it had all led to this moment. This alien throne, this ancient power that had been dormant, waiting for Earth to rise. "Why us?" Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper, though the weight of his words hung in the air. "Why were we chosen?" The figure stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. "Because," it said, "humanity is the key to the future, the key to ruling the stars." The air seemed to shift. The weight of the words settled in, heavy and suffocating. The room pulsed with an energy unlike anything Malik had ever felt, a strange combination of fear and possibility. It was clear now. Humanity's future was in their hands, but it came at a cost they could not yet understand. Before Malik could ask another question, the figure raised its hand again, and the pedestal in front of them hummed louder, its light blinding. The walls around them began to ripple, the symbols flashing faster, the entire room coming alive with ancient energy. It was as if the throne itself had awoken, and the galaxy was shifting on its axis, aligning for what was to come. "You have been chosen," the figure repeated, its voice growing louder. "But be warned, with power comes sacrifice. There are forces within this galaxy it will never allow you to rule. You must be prepared to fight, to defend, to conquer." Malik felt a jolt, like a lightning strike across his chest. His mind reeled. He had thought they were simply exploring an ancient ruin, looking for answers. But now, it seemed as though they had stumbled upon the greatest secret in the galaxy, and there was no going back. "We're ready," he said, his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and it nodded slowly. "Then rise, children of Earth. The stars are yours to command." The words echoed through Malik's mind as the entire chamber vibrated with energy, the ground trembling beneath their feet. As the throne rose into the air, bathed in light, Malik realized that the future of humanity had just begun. And it was a future full of unimaginable power, but also unimaginable peril.